Hello everyone, this is part 6 of What If Naruto was exiled and built a new village, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Lapras Hotel. I'm late. Everyone throughout the hotel could see a black blur run past them. He ran down the stairs and out the front door of the hotel and right into someone. The figure he ran into didn't even move. You little bastard. How dare you run into Lord Orochimaru? Yami's B ran cold, the Otokage. He looked up just as a large muscular man grabbed him and raised him up, by his jacket collar. Yami's eyes widened. I thought that Zaku guy was huge, this guy outclasses him altogether. Yami looked over the bald man's shoulder to see 4 other figures staring at the scene. 4 of the figures, including the one holding him, were wearing tan and black robes. The last one was in pure black and had a matching cage hat, with a sound symbol on it. This man, who looked no older and mid-20, had long black hair, black eyes, and pale skin. He was just staring at the boy. One of the other 3 was a tall man with black hair. He was in back. The next was a silver-haired woman, with glasses. She was to his right behind in front of the bald man and Yami. The final one was a woman with red hair. She was to his left. Both men were probably around mid-30s. The woman looked no older than 18 though. They must be trying to protect the Otokage from 4 sides, which means this man must have been in front. He was out of his thoughts when the giant started shaking him fiercely. I asked you a question, you little bastard. That's when the black-clad man chose to speak. Leave him, he's of no consequence. He turned to the silver-haired woman and her fiercely. She fell to the floor. Idiot. You however should have stopped the boy before he touched me. What the hell do I have you around for? With that said, he spat on her and started to glare at her cowering form. Yami winced when the man's eyes changed. They were both red and had 3 black commas around the pupils. Suddenly they changed once again. They were still red, but the pupil and comma disappeared to reveal a pupil shaped like a 3-pronged shuriken. The girl was scared to death. Her shaking made that obvious. Ma aaa asked tttt tira rr. Iimmmm so oorryyitttw on thapenagggga. She managed to stutter out. The black-robed master just glared at her for a little while longer. Finally he her again and sighed, his eyes turning back to their charcoal color. Nothing like Kabuto, miserable wretch. He focused on her again with a glare. Do not let it happen again. He then looked at Yami and smiled. He focused on the giant. Kukukaku, let him go. The giant made a nod and then snarled at Yami. He threw him back 10 feet and muttered, "You got lucky this time, you little bastard." With that the group started walking off, after the silver-haired girl got up. However, the black-haired man, the one who was standing behind Orochimaru, stayed back for a second and just stared at the child with cold black eyes. Yami grasped his shoulder, not even noticing the man's stare, and repressed a gasp. Why is my neck burning? The black-haired man just walked off. Yami just stared off in the direction that the group had just gone to. That was the Otokage. He stared for what seemed like hours. I'm still late. With one more glance at the direction Yami ran off. Outskirts of Kirigakure. Yami finally found his group waiting right next to a tree. There you are. The 2 looked at him and smiled. Yami, you're finally awake, responded Inaki. About damn time too. Okami. Yami stared at the 2, whilst panting, why'd you let me sleep in? You were having issues waking up, you were muttering complaints the entire time. Inaki. Yay. At one point you started muttering both Kitsune and Tanuki's names simultaneously, replied Okami with a smirk. Yami's face paled. What? He quickly looked at Inaki, who shook his head confirming that Okami was just messing with him. We figured you'd catch up, and if you didn't we'd come back and try to wake you up, if we needed you, that is. Inaki. Yami quickly shook his head. You guys will never believe who I met. Save it for later, here comes the Mizukage, said the medic. Yami looked towards the area Inaki indicated. They were all currently in a large field. A very large field, all the genins, from all the villages, were here waiting. The field was surrounded with trees and the Mizukage was standing on a giant rock with an amplifier in his hand. Listen up all of you. I know you're all ready to start the exam, so I'll keep it short. This exam will be completely team-based. You'll be with your team throughout the entire exam. The first part will be in area 666. He said that last part with an edge in his voice. Some of the genins shuddered, others raised their eyebrows. AKA, the Island of Doom. This time he screamed it out loud and raised his arms to emphasize the comment. Most everyone there sweated dropped, even some of the Mist Anbu who were there. He coughed and continued, anyways, these are the rules to the exam. We will take you to the island and you will be given a few hours to hide. When you hear the horn, you'll know it. When you hear it, you'll all be allowed to fight. You cannot fight before any violators will be seized by Anbu and be disqualified. The exam will continue until only 20 teams are left. He paused when he heard multiple gasps. When there are only 20 teams left, another horn will sound. Violence from that point on will be strictly prohibited. K is allowed but not necessary. He pulled out a scroll. You may just have the opposite team surrender if you wish. When this scroll is opened, an Anbu will be dispatched to your location and will take you to safety. You will be disqualified. Keep this in mind. Like I said, this test ends when there are only 20 teams left. Afterwards, the second exam will commence. The second exam will be a standard team versus team matchup. You will be put up against a team randomly. This will continue until there are only 5 teams left. The final 5 teams left will be granted the Law of Chunin. He paused for a second. I'll say it again, only 5 teams will be given the Law of Chunin. Fight well, and good luck. With that said, he puffed away. Okami grinned. Sounds like fun. Inaki scowled at him but then turned to Yami. What were you going to say, Yami? Yami turned to the medic side and decided to tell him the story of what happened. Well, you'll never guess who I met. He was off when he heard 3 voices yelled out. My eternal rival. Yami quickly looked over to the voices with dread. About 20 yards away were the 3 green beasts and saw them bugging another group. A masked figure, with silver hair, sighed and buried his nose in his book again. The 2 people close to him sighed as well. The 3 figures, in the disgusting outfits, glared at each other as well. They started screaming back and forth that the masked figure was her eternal rival. Finally they got fed up. One of them asked, Sakumo-san, please tell my comrades that you are my eternal rival. No, you're my eternal rival, yelled the girl. No, you are my eternal rival. Tell them all, yelled the other. Sakumo shifted both his eyes, the only thing not covered by his mask, over to the 3 figures. I'm sorry, were you guys saying anything? The green beasts gasped. What a hip comeback from my eternal rival. Realizing what the others said, they all stared at each other again. The other 2 genins started staring at the scene before them. One was a brown-haired boy smoking a cigarette and the other was a purple-haired girl with a snake around her neck. They were all wearing leaf heats. Inaki whispered in Yami's ear, what the heck is up with that group? One is smoking, one has a snake around her neck, 3 are weird beyond all reason, and that last one is reading Ika Paradise out here in the open like some sort of pea. He was off when he heard a pea giggle behind him. They turned to see Okami, reading Ika Paradise, in the open, like some sort of pea. Inaki and Yami sighed. You were saying earlier. Yami recomposed himself, I saw Orochimaru. Inaki's eyes widened. Okami didn't even look up from his book when he said, next time you see him, flick him off for me. Inaki looked at Okami, are you nuts? Okami was about to reply when he was off. Alright maggots, come and pick up your scroll and then head towards the dock. Inaki sighed, come on. Yami started walking once again when he suddenly felt something at the back of his mind. He quickly started looking around to see Team 17, Sakura, Ayami, and Aki. All 3 of them were giving him dangerous smirks. They then walked off. He still felt something in the back of his mind and kept searching around. He finally saw them, what he needed to see. 3 figures donned in sound heats. One was a white-haired boy in a white shirt and grey pants. Tied to his belt were multiple bells. The second was another red-haired girl, scantily clad in a tight grey top and skirt. She had a flute and a dagger tied on her belt. The final one was a black-haired boy, wearing only black. He had a large black two-pronged cleaver on his back. The sound team were just looking around, then they walked off as well. Yami. The psychic turned to see Okami and Inaki, the former waving him to follow. Yami stared at the three once more and then went to follow his team. Island of Doom, man, what a retarded name. Okay, good luck you three, and remember, no fighting until you hear the horn. They had just been dropped, on a small private boat, on the Island of Doom. Inaki looked around. Alright, let's move. The three of them took off. Okami was currently in the lead, Yami on his right and Inaki on his left. They looked around and could see nothing but trees, most of them being at least 20 feet high, on the large island. They were told that in the center there would be a large tower, where the Anbu resided, and to avoid it as much as possible. They were also told that there was plenty of game around as well as good places to hide throughout this island. Hours later, the trio had been running for hours when they finally reached a cave. It was hidden pretty well from view, covered by multiple vines and concealed by trees. They wouldn't have even found it if Okami hadn't had tripped over a rock and fallen through it. And that's why you shouldn't read you perverted books while you're running through the forest, stated the medic. It was conveniently only yards away from a lake and waterfall. Because of the waterfall, they could talk all they wanted and not worry about anyone overhearing them, or so they thought. That's your plan, screamed a pissed-off swordsman. Calm down, Okami, it's a good one, we can't just start going and beating down everyone we see, we should lay low, and wait. Yami. Inaki sighed, this exam could last a few days, maybe even a few weeks, can't be too sure about it, the ones who just go rushing off to fight will be the ones taken out first, most likely. They will probably be taken out by the ones hiding in the shadows, that's the way of the ninja Okami. Okami sighed, we don't have to make chunin, we just have to survive this, he said, reiterating their primary objective. But if we do, we'll show those bastards up, fine, we'll play it your way. Inaki sighed and smiled, finally getting through to him, however the second he blinked and opened his eyes again, Okami's nose was poised in his book. Inaki and Yami resisted the urge to face fault. Yami sighed, we should probably set up some traps around this area. That's when the three felt it. Too late, muttered the swordsman. Zankuha, decapitating air wind. Outside the cave. Three figures had one hand extended towards the cave. They all yelled, Zankuha, and three giant blasts of sound started heading towards the cave. After the wave dispersed, dust covered their view of the inside of the cave. The dust started to seep its way out of the cave. Watch out, yelled one of the sound nins, as they all jumped out of the way. Two Fuma shurikens flew out of the cave and directly after them came three figures. Yami, Okami, and Inaki landed in the field, with their backs facing each other. Yami used his power to recall the shuriken back to him, holding one in each hand. Okami was holding one wakizashi and one kunai. Inaki was holding a few senbon in one hand and was silently concentrating chakra towards his other hand. They were surrounded by the three nins on each side. They were in the middle of a large field. On one side the cave that they had come from, connected to a rocky cliff, which also formed the waterfall. The waterfall fell into a large lake. The rest of the area was surrounded in forest. Just as the sound nins were about to raise their arms again, the three moon nins went on the offense, each throwing their own projectiles. The sound nins were forced to dodge as the moon nins each chose their own opponents and ran after them. Yami was running after one that was conveniently close to the lake. He recalled one of his Fuma shuriken and started attacking the sound nin. The sound nin was doing everything he could to dodge Yami's attacks and finally unsheathed a long katana. Yami, seeing this, Yami recalled his second Fuma and started going all out. The sound nin tried a horizontal S on the psychic, which was smoothly blocked with a Fuma. Yami, seeing the opening, quickly attacked with his other. Unfortunately, the sound nin curved his body out of the way of this. He managed to free his katana from the Fuma and, with one hand, tried to S Yami again, vertically. Yami quickly raised both his Fuma to stop this attack. The sound nin smirked. He raised one hand and yelled, Zankuha. Yami was quickly blown back several yards, dropping both of his Fuma. He fell into the lake. Thought the enraged psychic. Okami was running after one of the sound nin who quickly unsheathed the katana. Okami started hitting him with a flurry of strikes, his second wakizashi already unsheathed. Kenjutsu, Jiten Ken, spin blade, muttered the swordsman who started spinning, his blades extended outward, like a top. The sound nin couldn't keep up with the swordsman and was quickly getting pushed back, as well as getting minor S from the blade. He was forced to jump back, to avoid getting chopped up. Okami, seeing this, stopped spinning and lunged at the sound nin and started attacking him in another flurry of attacks. He was pushing the sound nin back until his back touched a tree. Okami tried S the nin, but was disappointed when the nin did a backflip and landed on the tree, on the trunk of the tree using chakra to stay on. Okami quickly started to run up the tree and engaged the sound nin once again. The sound nin was obviously getting pissed off this time. He blocked one of Okami's strikes and quickly extended his hand, Zankua. A blast of sound blew Okami towards the ground, but he was able to flip and land on his feet. He then jumped back away from the tree and sheathed his swords. The sound nin jumped to the ground and pointed his katana to Okami. You know we don't have to do this, you could just drop all your valuables, and then I will allow you to use your scroll to surrender. Okami started to snicker at this, which enraged the sound nin. Yea, like I'd ever surrender to a weakling like you. Okami quickly reached over his shoulder and unsheathed his Hakume Shiken. He pointed the black blade towards the sound nin. Alright you schmuck, let's play. They both lunged at each other and started exchanging S and guards. Finally Okami did a backflip and started doing one-handed seals in the air. Futon, Tetsu Hakaisha, Iron Destroyer, called Okami whose sword started getting surrounded with swirling air. He S at the sound nin, vertically from his head to his, Aahhhhh. Okami smirked, but stiffened when he heard something. He quickly turned around to see Yami surrounded by sound nins. S. Inaki lunged after his opponent, who quickly unsheathed his own katana. Inaki pulled out some senbon needles and the two faced off. Inaki and the sound nin just stood there for what seemed like hours, but it was only a few seconds. Inaki could hear multiple sounds that came as his teammates were fighting, but chose to ignore them. I can't help them now, so I'll have to trust that they will be fine. The sound nin lunged after the medic quickly and tried to cleave him with his sword. Inaki easily dodged the attack and threw some senbon at the sound nin. He quickly threw some senbon needles at the sound nin who dodged them himself. He tried once again to S the medic, who dodged once again. This time Inaki turned and S the sound nin in the side of the leg with a senbon needle. The sound nin winced in pain but recomposed himself, however it was all too late. Inaki's glowing right hand came at the sound nin's chest and quickly S past the sound nin. The sound nin fell to the ground motionless. He wouldn't be rising again. Inaki winced for a second. I hate K so much. I wish I didn't need to do that. But I really had no choice. He stayed like that for a few seconds and then turned. What he saw made him pale and his B ran cold. Yami was currently underwater recovering from his attack. Bastard, he started concentrating his chakra and performing hand seals, ones which he would need to thank Ray for helping him learn these past few months. He closed his eyes and opened them once again to reveal brilliant silver eyes. He learned that he could use psychic power to help guide water, being one of the elements that required the most control to aim. Suten, Suiruden, water release. Water dragon bullet, up on the surface. A large dragon made purely out of water started to rise from the lake. The sound nin near the lake froze. The water dragon flew at the sound nin and engulfed him. They drove him towards the cliff and S him on the rocky wall. Once released from the water he started coughing like crazy. He quickly looked up and his B froze. Yami chose this moment to jump out of the water. He quickly recalled a fuma to his hand and threw it at the sound nin. It implanted itself in the chest of the sound nin, and the sound nin would never rise again. Yami landed with a thud on solid ground. He started gasping for air. He heard snickering to his side and quickly looked to see what it was. His B ran cold, yet again. There standing was 6 sound nins. They smirked at the tired psychic. Yami snarled at them. They each raised a hand at the psychic and yelled, Zankua. The sound waves blew Yami several feet back and he was S against the cliff. Zankua. They screamed again and Yami was once again S and C by the sound waves and blades. Yami looked back at his adversaries, having somehow survived 12 Zankuas. He tried to move but he couldn't. He was too tired and too hurt. Is this how it ends? The sound nins raised their hands once again. Zankukyokua, extreme decapitating air waves. Tsukigakure, Megumi's house. A crash was heard. Oops, sorry sensei, said a smiling blonde. That's all right Kitsune. Megumi walked over and grabbed the broken frame from the whiskered girl's hands. She started throwing the glass shards away. When was that taken? Asked the curious fox girl. Oh this, I believe it was when Yami was 7. It was his birthday and no matter what I did, I couldn't get the boy to smile for me. So I settled for getting his passive face. He never did smile much, why is that? Asked the curious girl. Megumi sighed and suppressed the urge to cry. Yami is difficult, I can't really tell you what's wrong with him, it's not my place to say anything. She looked at the photo and smiled. You know, usually when a picture of someone breaks, that means something terrible has happened to them. She started to giggle. Kitsune however looked extremely distressed. Megumi looked at her and logged, oh calm down, it's just a silly superstition. Now, what was it you wanted again? Island of Doom. Okami and Inaki looked on in horror, this time dust started flying everywhere. They couldn't see the condition of their friend. The 6 sound nin smirked and started walking over to the other 2 ninja. Okami had tears in his eyes. Bastards, he grabbed his Hakume shiken and was about to rush towards the sound nin when it happened. Everyone froze as evil energy started flying out of the dust. Black, purple, and dark blue chakra started dispersing the dust. It was shining with such intensity that neither of them could see through it. Finally it started to fade a little to reveal a smirking Yami. His normally brilliant silver eyes now looked twisted and perverse. His black hair was down due to the water. His jack all but disappeared, only rags of it were left, and his fishnet undershirt wasn't looking too great either. He was laughing continuously. That's when everything changed. His skin started paling and it turned a dark blue color. His fingernails started lengthening until they were claws. His neck-length black hair turned snow white. Finally out of nowhere 2 large black feathery wings exploded out of his back in a surge of dark chakra. He glared at the nins and kept snickering to himself. He raised his right hand in a semi-fist, his pointer and middle fingers being the only 2 extended. The 2 fingers started to glow in black energy as well. He finally whips his hand to his left and whips it again to his right. As he does this, evil chakra, in the form of a large rope, extends from his fingers and heads straight for the sound nin. This is the time that they all break out of their stupor and react. They all jumped back to avoid the chakra whip. Unfortunately the 2 in front weren't fast enough. The chakra whip quickly the one in front at the waist, see him in 2. The second managed to escape though, only losing an arm, from the elbow down. The first one quickly fell to the ground, The other 4 stared at their 2 comrades heavily. They all looked up to discover with a shock that the demon was gone. The one in back stiffened, are you looking for me? He turned his head to see Yami grinning at him. He nearly had a heart attack when he saw Yami's lengthened canines. The dark whip started snaking its way around the sound nin. It encircled both his arms, both his legs, and his neck very slowly. Speed didn't matter, the sound nin was too shocked to move. Suddenly Yami pulled his arm back and the sound nin practically exploded in a burst of B. The others jumped and quickly looked behind them to see the dark angel they were looking for. Yami was covered in the sound nin's B. He smirked, still making himself look like a demon. One of the sound nins quickly recovered though, demon. D. He raised his hand up prepared to blast Yami, Zankua. It would have hit Yami, but the sound nin's hand quickly rose up, sending the sound wave upwards harmlessly. Yami extended an arm and his eyes glowed stronger. The sound nin started being lifted up in air by his arm. Yami was laughing the entire time. That arm of yours is far too dangerous. Yami closed his opened hand, and with that the sound nin's arm broke, at the elbow. He dropped to the ground clutching his arm. The 2 sound nin remaining quickly unsheathed their swords. They jumped at the psychic and attempted to see him apart. However, they were quickly stopped by 2 Fuma shuriken that quickly found their way to Yami's side. The 2 sound nin continued to try and at the demon who didn't even make a move. Suddenly smaller shurikens started to fly out of his pants and what was left of his jacket. They all floated around and flew off towards the 2 downed sound nins. They embedded themselves on downed nins. Yami turned his attention to the 2 downed nins. He turned his attention to the ones still trying to attack him. The Fuma shurikens quickly flew out towards one of the sound nin. Yami flew out of towards the other and gave him a punch in the jaw. He quickly did a backflip kick which sent the sound nin a few feet into the air. He dropped his sword. Yami quickly flew up towards the sound nin and started kick and punch him upward. Finally Yami gave him one quick kick and flew above him. He put both of his clawed hands together and screamed. He blasted the sound nin with a surge of psychic energy which him down on the ground. He would not be getting up again. Yami looked at the other sound nin who was trying his hardest to parry the two Fuma. He quickly looked up towards a katana, the one that belonged to the sound nin he just beat up. He lifted it up to the air and threw it at the sound nin. It embedded itself in his chest. Yami let out a horrible roar into the air and slowly made his way down. Okami and Inaki looked on in horror at what their friend had just done. Be hell, I'm glad he's on our side, thought the swordsman. Yami, what are you? What is this darkness that keeps enveloping you, thought the medic. Deep in the forest, three figures looked on in the scene, two of them were horrified. One of them quickly wrote a message. With a few hand seals, a bird puffed into existence. What are you doing? Asked one of the horrified figures. Sending a message to Margulis sensei, he'll want to hear about this. The figure attached the note to the bird. The bird flew off with the message. Island of Doom, forest. Three girls were running through the forest. The one in the middle broke the silence. Come on, I sense it, it's really close. One of the others spoke up this time. Aki, why are we going towards this strange chakra you're reading? Aki turned to Ayami. In the same area I was sensing multiple chakra readings as well. I bet anything there's a huge fight there, we should go check it out. Sakura turned to Ayami this time. Come on sister, this sounds like a lot of fun to me. Ayami smirked and nodded. We're coming up on the clearing. The three girls jumped into the clearing. They landed and gasped. Demon Yami, horrified Inaki, Okami, not reading Ika Paradise. Okami and Inaki were both walking to their transformed friend, slowly. Okami was the first to break the silence. Yo Yami. You alright there bro? The demon quickly turned to the two of them, silver eyes blazing, and with a whip of his right arm he sent his demonic whip at his two teammates. The whip quickly see through the two ninjas before they were able to jump out of the way. Yami had a satisfied smirk on his face but quickly turned into a snarl. The 2D ninjas turned into sea tree stumps. A small distance away, in the trees Okami and Inaki were watching their friends. See, I told you that plan sucked. Inaki turned to his long-time friend. He sighed. Tsukikage-sama did warn us this could happen. This must be what he called the cursed seal level 2. With him in that form, he'll lose his sanity. Okami sighed, but then his eyes widened at the sight before him. The hot girls are in trouble. Inaki stared at the sight and mentally cursed. In the clearing Yami turned to the three new arrivals. The girls looked on in horror at the sight before them. Aki smirked at the demon before her. This looks like fun. She got into a taijutsu stance. Sakura and Ayami didn't look nearly as enthusiastic but got started doing hand seals. Aki launched herself at the demon, not knowing that it was Yami or even bothering to check his forehead protector on his neck. She threw a punch at Yami, and missed. Her fist seemed to be pushed by some invisible force away from his face. Yami grinned at her and Aki snarled at him. She spun around and tried to kick him, however the invisible force quickly flipped her over. She was currently vertically upside down and quickly maneuvered her body so she would land on her feet. She launched herself at the demon again and started throwing a flurry of punches at him. They all missed. Suddenly the girl started getting blurry. Yami blinked a few times. It wasn't the girl, it was his vision. Everything was going black. Yami looked over at the twins to see them casting a genjutsu on the demonic Hikari. Yami growled. He summoned his Fuma shuriken, whilst holding Aki at bay, and sent them flying at the girls. The twins quickly jumped out of the way to avoid the Fuma. It successfully dispelled the genjutsu off of the Hikari. The twins pulled out senbon needles and started chucking them at the demon. They immediately froze in their place. Yami quickly threw a punch at Aki, hitting her in the gut. Afterwards he grabbed her by the arm and threw her over her shoulder. Then he quickly threw the senbon needles back at the twins. They barely managed to dodge the attacks but lost sight of the demon. Big mistake. Sakura screamed when she felt someone grab her arms from behind. She turned her head and nearly had a heart attack when she saw the demon behind her. It came close and whispered in her ear. "You're the second person today who let me get behind them." Sakura's eyes widened. Ayami was frozen in place and Aki was just starting to get back up. The demon turned his eyes to somewhere and motioned for her to do the same. That one right there was the first, black chakra, in the form of a whip, started circling around the girl. She was still stunned by the sight before her, she couldn't even scream. It successfully encircled itself around her P-form. Yami gave her one more demonic grin. "Say goodbye, little girl." Yami pulled his arm back, but quickly stopped, his eyes widened. The dark chakra disappeared from the girl's body and he quickly started howling in pain. He grasped his head and stepping backwards, trying to keep his balance. The cursed seal started to burn brightly on his neck. At that point everyone could see it through the holes in his destroyed jacket. The kanji of light started shining silver. His whole body started flaring with evil chakra as it was absorbed into the cursed seal. Finally the Hikari's body was cleared of all dark chakra. His body was back to normal, his wings had disappeared. His hair black again. His eyes blue once more. He was however still howling in pain and clutching his head. Finally he dropped to the ground and fell unconscious. The three girls in front of him could only stare. After being released from the whip, Sakura had fallen to her knees, panting strongly. Ayami was the one to break the silence. "Yami." That's the second the other two members of Team 7 decided to make their move. Okami jumped in and grabbed the downed psychic. He placed Yami over his shoulder and jumped into the trees. They saw Inaki jump into the same trees. The girls could only stare in the direction the trio went off in. Kirigakure, hotel room, hours later. A man could be seen sitting on a chair in his, less than adequate, hotel room. Bastards can't provide a decent F-room, the man thought as he ran his hands through his ebony hair. His eyes shifted towards the open window. He raised his arm and at the same time a bird flew on it. He found a small scroll attached the bird and immediately relieved the bird of it. The bird flew off and perched itself on the windowsill as the man opened the message. Margulis Sensei. I wish report a very odd individual. He seems to possess strong telekinetic powers. More importantly he seems to possess one of Orochimaru's cursed seals. This boy is a Suki Nin. The man's eyes widened at this implication. Impossible, there are only 3 people with the power to grant cursed seals. Orochimaru-sama, Abel, and myself, and all missing Nin of Sound Wake. It's not possible. He then continued to read. He K2 teams of our weaker genin single-handedly by transforming into level 2 of the cursed seal. He seems to possess this whip made completely out of dark chakra. Chakra whip, muttered the Margulas. There was only one clan in existence that possessed that kind of ability. But they no longer exist, I made sure of it myself. Margula's eyes widened in shock. Flashback. A tall man had just finished putting his shirt back on. Sweat dripping down his face. A sick satisfied smirk plastered on his face. He looked down at the woman on the floor. She had tears welling in her eyes. She looked up at the man, whom only moments ago she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. She stared at him with disbelieving eyes, as if wishing that all that occurred were only a nightmare, or some sort of misunderstanding. Her long blonde hair. He smirked at her. Mission number 1 complete, he said as he held a scroll. He turned to her. Now, mission number 2, eradication of the Hikari clan. Goodbye my darling. He pulled out a kunai and went close to her, but then stopped. He looked deep in thought for a while. Tears welled out of her blue eyes. Margulis-kun, she reached her arm out to him, but he just kicked it. He stared at her in disgust, and then smiled his sick smirk. He preformed a few hand seals. His hand started to glow purple. He then kneeled down next to the woman and placed his glowing hand on top of her navel. This should be a lot more fun. In your weakened state, there's just no way you'll survive this. He kept his hand on her navel for a while. Finally his hand stopped glowing. The woman's eyes widened and she started screaming in pain and thrashing about. Goodbye, Keri. End flashback. No, it would have been impossible for her to survive such an attack. Even if she did, she couldn't have survived, much less bear a child. Even if it did happen, the Hikaris were only partial psychics who received premonitions about future events, How would this child possess telekinetic powers, the cursed seal's power? Margulies shook his head and scribbled something on a piece of paper. I don't know who or what he is, but he must be eliminated. He attached the paper to the bird and it flew off. Island of Doom, days later. Inaki was staring at the still form of Yami. They were both shrouded in darkness, due to the cave they were in. Okami and Inaki managed to find another hideout whilst running with the unconscious psychic. It was another cave, but this one was in the middle of the forest. Inaki was busy eating some cold rations while waiting for Okami. Okami had gone scouting around, as well as foraging for some fruit. Inaki sighed as he looked over at Yami. The psychic has been sleeping for 5 days straight. Inaki was starting to get worried about Yami. First he transforms into a monster, and now he won't wake up. Yami started to stir but then quickly stopped. Okami ran into the cave, a bag in his hand. Here. He threw the bag in front of the medic. He opened it to reveal a variety of fruit. Good job, see anything? Okami sighed. I saw a few teams escaping the forest using their scrolls, also saw a few fights. Inaki kept eating the ration. Okami sat down and started eating his own. Somewhere off in the forest. Let the fabulous battle of youths commence. We'll show you just how much our youth burns more than yours. Yosh. If we do not win this battle, we will run 50 laps around Konahagakure. If we cannot do this, we will punch a log 500 times. If we cannot do this. And so the three continued to babble on. They had cornered 3 grass nins. The grass nins were just standing there at the display of the 3-leaf nins. It would be an understatement to say that they were terrified beyond all reason. One of the grass nins, a girl who looked like she was about to cry, turned to one of her teammates. Damn it, Saito, you have the scroll. For the love of all that is good, get us out of here. She screeched to her teammate. Saito grabbed the scroll that Kirigakure had given them. He opened it and with some bee activated it. 4 puffs of smokes went around the grass nins. The green beast stopped babbling to look at the scene before them with wide eyes. 4 Anbu appeared, 1 for each puff of smoke. 3 off flicked their cloak around the grass nins and in another puff of smoke, disappeared. The 4th took a look at the green beast, shuddered, and disappeared in his own puff of smoke. The 3-leaf nins just looked at the spot where their opponents were only moments ago. Handu broke the silence. What? Why does this keep on happening to us? Anarkaki covered his face with his arm. I don't understand it, they keep running away, why? Kiku put a finger on her chin and looked deep in thought. Maybe, just maybe, suddenly the sun came shining behind Kiku as if it was setting, but not really, they run because they are terrified of our incredible youthful ways. Handu looked up and threw his fist in the air. Yes, that must be it, the youth is clouded. And unable to burn to their brightest capabilities. Anarkaki looked up and pumped his fist. Then we must discover OPONENTSWHO have youths that burn as brightly as Aries. We must find this group. Kiku extended her arm and pointed her finger. Then we will go. We run towards the setting sun. Let's go. With that the 3 genins ran off. Unknown to them there were 3 figures watching them. One had silver hair and was wearing a mask, one had purple hair and had a snake around her neck, and the last one had brown hair and was smoking. The purple-haired girl turned to her teammates. What a bunch of freaks. The 2 boys just nodded. Banshees, Kofam, I mean Aki, Sakura, and Ayami, yay, that's what I meant. They were still a bit shaken up about what happened a few days ago. They had met up with a few teams since then and easily defeated them. But they couldn't beat one ninja. Was that really Yami? Asked a curious Ayami. Sakura shuddered and involuntarily placed her hand around her neck. She suppressed a sob. I don't know, we'll worry about it late, replied Aki. Ayami nodded. Sakura partially sobbed again. Team 7 hours later. Ugh, moaned the psychic. He rose into a sitting position and covered his head. His eyes widened as memories of what happened returned to him. Every life he snuffed out. Every deed he did. Even attacking his own teammates. The 2 people that he started to consider brothers. But that's not what scared him. I don't care that I K those people. I don't care that I almost K Sakura. I don't even give a damn that I almost K Okami and Inaki. Tears started to well up in the eyes of the psychic. I don't care, he muttered. He turned to see Okami glaring at him. He was holding one of his wakizashis. Are you You? He asked. Yami couldn't find an answer. He lowered his head so he bangs shadowed his eyes. I don't know. Okami bared his teeth. If you don't know, then who the F does? Yami couldn't find an answer. Inaki just stared at the scene before him and sighed. Yami. He heard something, his eyes shifted to the cave entrance. He quickly picked up a bag off of the ground. Guys, hate to ruin this, but we've got company. They all stopped when they heard a flute being played. Outside the cave were 3 genin about 10 yards away from the entrance. A scantily dressed redhead girl pulled a flute off of her belt. She closed her eyes and started playing a melody and then muttered, Mateki, Bakuritsu Superitsu, demon flute, exploding spirits. Her chakra started to flare up as she kept on playing the melody. Her chakra started to gather in 4 locations around her. It gathered itself into 4 red orbs, which started to dance around the girl. The second she opened her eyes, the wisps flew forward into the cave. A few seconds later, an explosion erupted out of the cave. However, like the last time, 3 figures leapt out of the cave. Yami, Okami and Inaki stared at the 3 genin before them. Okami sneered, more sound nin. Yami's eyes widened as he recognized the genins as the ones that he saw before. One of the genins, a boy with black hair and had a cleaver on his back, stepped forward. He sneered at the Hikari, how did you come into possession of the cursed seal? Yami's eyes widened as he unconsciously grasped his birthmark. Okami sneered, what's it to you? The boy sneered right back at Okami, that is a sacred symbol of Otogaku. You have no right to possess it. Yami, still grasping the seal, merely shook his head, it's nothing but a dark curse. Hence the name Cursed Seal. The boy snarled, you dirty bastard, how dare you? He pulled out his cleaver. A boy with white hair, wearing a white shirt and grey pants, walked forward. He then launched himself at the swordsman and started throwing punch after punch. The girl grasped her dagger and did the same to Inaki. The black-haired boy glared at Yami and jumped. Okami. Okami was easily dodged punch after punch of the boy he was currently fighting. This guy sucks. Okami quickly drew both his wakizashis, prepared to end this quickly. The sound nin, however, jumped back. He pulled bells out of his belts, which were attached through senbon needles. He started throwing them up, high into the air. Okami kept an eye out to make sure that none of the senbon would hit him, while keeping an eye on his opponent. They all landed in a circle around the 2 fighters. The sound nin started performing hand seals. Oni Yobirin no Jutsu, demonic bells technique. Okami's eyes widened. He dropped his swords and grasped his ears in pain. He dropped to his knees. Too loud. He looked up to see a fist coming at this face. Okami got thrown back a few feet. He landed with a thud. Inaki started hurling multiple senbon needles at the girl before him, but she kept blocking them skillfully. He grasped his chest in pain. He grabbed some senbon needles and blocked another attack using them. He gasped when he remembered Yami's position. He reached into his back, still blocking the girl's dagger, and pulled out a Fuma shuriken. He flicked it open and tossed it. Yami continuously dodged attacks from the cleaver-wielding ninja. Unfortunately, in his weakened state, he could barely do anything and was getting multiple S and scratches on his body. Yami turned in time to catch a Fuma shuriken. He smirked as he blocked the cleaver. With this, I'll tear him apart. Yami widened his eyes. Tear him apart? Is that me talking out of necessity, or is it the cursed seal's influence on me? Yami became so distracted that the sound nin was able to push him back. Yami staggered several feet before falling. He had dropped his Fuma. The sound nin jumped back a few yards. He seemed to wait for a second. The sound nin then grasped his sword in a way, as if to charge straight at Yami to run him through. He started to charge. He's coming. I'll have to push him back. Yami extended his arms, still sitting, towards the charging sound nin. He concentrated all his power to push his adversary back. Yami's eyes widened. It isn't working. My power isn't working. Yami's eyes widened once more when he saw the boy getting closer. He shut his eyes tight. This is the end. Suddenly a horn sounded throughout the forest. It kept blowing. Yami just sat there, waiting for his life to end. It never came. The sound nin looked at the psychic with disdain. Yami's eyes widened. Again, the horn. The end of the first exam. The sound nin kept staring at the psychic as if he were trying to decide whether or not to snuff out his life or not, K the boy and get thrown out of the exam, or let the boy live and try to K him later. The boy screamed, a-a-a-a-a-h-h-h-h-h-h-h. Hotel room. Yami was currently resting in his hotel room. He was lying on his back, on his bed. He had his legs crossed under his head for support. His jacket was destroyed and, stupidly, it was the only one he thought to bring. So he lied there, with a white shirt on, instead of his normal black jacket and fishnet shirt. Kirigako had provided each of the winning teams a training ground. Okami and Inaki were off training. The second part of the exam would be taking place in 3 weeks from today, 1 month after the end of part 1. Like stated, 20 teams have passed the first exam. 3 were from Moon, 4 from Sound, 4 from Leaf, 5 from Mist, 2 from Grass, and 2 from Sand. During the second exam the teams would be C to 5. Those 5 teams would be declared Chunin. He had just finished training for the second part of the Chunin exam. He was doing his usual exercise of training his telekinetic abilities, using items around the rooms. Problem was that, though his powers did return, his telekinetic powers was even harder to control than when he first started using them. He could barely lift the tiniest of objects off the ground. His other problem was due to the fact of the cursed seal. He angrily clutched his birthmark, as if it was the source of all his problems, which in this case it was. Can this thing destroy my soul, if I rely on it too much? I didn't care that I K all those nins, they were living breathing people, and I don't even give a damn about the fact that I just snuffed out their lives. Silent tears slid from his eyes. When I use the cursed seal, it makes me so much more powerful, but it has the power to turn me into a monster. He'd been thinking of what to do for a long time. Since he awakened from his slumber during the first exam. The subject of the cursed seal hadn't left his mind for more than a few seconds. If I never use the seal again I won't need to worry about this, but I won't be able to use the power I get from having it. What if I just let myself go, succumb to the power of the cursed seal, let myself become a monster? Ninjas shouldn't feel feelings during missions, it screws with their judgment. It seemed like the most simple of options. Throwing away his soul, to become colder and stronger. But can I really throw away my heart? He sighed. The seal has saved me already multiple times, it's helped me complete missions and save my friends. Can I really live without that power? Yami sighed, maybe I wasn't ready to leave the academy. He clutched the seal harder. Damn it. What the hell am I supposed to do? Having difficulties. Yami jumped at the sound of the voice. He thought that he was alone. He looked up to see the Tsukikage at the door. Damn it, you almost gave me a heart attack. Did you just get here? Weizu laughed. Yami-kun, I've been here for about 10 minutes now. I've been watching you for a while now. Yami's eyes widened. 10 minutes. I didn't even hear you. I didn't even sense you. Weizu laughed once more. And that is why you are a genin and why I'm a cage. Yami scowled at this and decided to lie back down. Weizu came and sat on the bed that was right next to his. I saw Inaki-kun earlier. He is very worried about you. So is Okami-san. Yami thought back to his 2 teammates. He noticed that Inaki was worried about him. Okami was on edge, as if afraid that he would go nuts once again. Yami sighed. It's understandable after everything that's happened in the past couple of weeks. He looked over to the cage curiously. What are you doing here anyways? I know most important people come for the tournament portion of the exam, but it's still 3 weeks away, shouldn't you be back home still? Weizu smiled. It's a custom really. The Tsukikage always goes to the tournament portion of the exam about a week early to give all ninjas of Moon a little special training. I decided to come 3 weeks ahead of schedule too, really needed a vacation. We're on good terms with Kirigako so they won't mind this old man staying around for a bit. Yami nodded. So everyone who failed got home okay? Weizu looked sad for a moment. Yes, the ones who failed got home alright, he sighed. Unfortunately, we lost more than a few genin. There will be a lot of sadness in Tsukigako for a while. Yami looked at the old man curiously. Sue, who's watching the village? Waiju's face turned serious for a second. The council. Yami's eyes widened, and a second council made out of a combination of clan heads and family heads. Yami seemed to calm down a little at hearing this. All the clan heads and family heads. Weizu nodded, all except you that is, and occasionally Kitsune-chan. Hisashi-san is tutoring Shikyo-kun in politics. Every now and then Kitsune-chan comes and takes part in these meetings, every few days when she can be taken away from missions. Some of the clan heads, Hisashi-san included, all take part in teaching Kitsune-chan, as well as their own children. Waiju's face returned to its calm self. I didn't come here for idle chit-chat. Like I said, you teammates are concerned about you. Yami, tell me what happened in the Island of Doom. Yami sighed, but started spilling the whole story. About their confrontation with the first 3 sound nins. Him getting ambushed by another 6. His transformation into the winged demon. The almost K his friends. The fight with Team 17. Going into a coma. His awakening and the confrontation with Okami. The events with the last sound team. And finally, the lack of emotions, his lack of concern. Waiju's face paled at about the time of his transformation. Minutes passed that seemed like hours. Finally he sighed and stated, so many unanswered questions. Let's start with this one. Why do you think that you passed out when you were about 2, K Sakura? Yami looked at him. I experimented using the cursed seal before. I could only get to level 1 of course. Anyways, every time I used the cursed seal, level 1, I wouldn't receive the strain that I normally would whenever I used my psychic powers for prolonged amounts of time. I wouldn't feel a damn thing. But then after a while, I would get sudden jolts of pain, as if it had built up but was being held back. I guess the cursed seal temporarily suppressed the pain. It happened that way during the mission with the sand team. During the fight with the squid, I didn't feel a thing, but after the battle, while I was sitting on the beach with Tanuki, I received a huge headache right there. Temporary suppression of your headaches, muttered Weizu. Tsukikage-sama, I'm concerned about my lack of feelings. Weizu sighed, this was one of the things that I felt most concerned about. Yami sighed and looked up towards the ceiling. What if I just let go, let myself fall into the darkness, wouldn't that make me a better ninja? Weizu just stared at him, concern etched on his face. Apathy doesn't make one a better ninja, it makes one a better K. Yami's eyes widened. Though, K is part of what ninja are meant to do, it is not all that we are, you'll do good to remember that. Yami couldn't move. I'd be nothing but a murderer. Besides, you've been wanting to find a way to become a true Hikari, as you say it. Can you really do that while engulfing yourself in darkness? Yami's eyes widened, he lifted himself up and looked at the old man. The odd weapon I used against the sound nins, was that the Hikari Kakuen. Weizu looked to be deep in thought for a while, sounds like it was something very similar. No doubt it was a tainted version of it, perverted by the powers of the seal. Tell me, how did it feel to you? How did you feel when you possessed it? Yami looked in thought for a moment. It felt like an extension of my arm, though I was only holding it with 2 fingers, it felt like power. Power. Yami nodded, it's the only word that I can think of for it. Hikari Kakuen originally could not be used to see, it could only grasp things, and smack them away, pending on the will of the user. Special techniques were used in combination with the Hikari Kakuen. With the protection of the Hikari Kakuen, your clan was able to become one of the first people to use their personalized taijutsu. Yami thought about these words, he remembered hearing about his clan's special taijutsu. Most of their taijutsu moves were aerial and acrobatic skills, which would leave them open to attacks. However, with the Hikari Kakuen they would have a perfect defense to counter this problem. Most of the moves also involved the Hikari Kakuen, making it impossible for him to learn them. If you can perform that move, I see no reason that you can't perform the original. Have you tried? He nodded. A few times. He looked at his own hands. It has something to do with concentrating chakra to my first and middle finger, but I don't understand what to do next. Have you tried meditating for the answer? I can't even concentrate, much less meditate. I can't perform the Hikari Kakuen, and I can't even use my telekinesis anymore. Weizu looked shocked at this. You failed to mention you were having problems with your telekinesis. Yami shook his head. I can still perform it, but I can barely do a single damn thing. Weizu smiled. Yami, you're using your mind to move objects around. With all these issues going on in your mind, do you really expect to be able to use it well? Yami sighed. I guess you're right, but I can't clear my head. It is but another task that you must accomplish alone. I cannot clear your head for you, As for the Hikari Kakuen, it is a move that is said to be created of pure light, from the user's heart. Yami looked at the Tsukikage oddly. Well, that's what your mother always said. If she was right, how do you expect to perform such a move with tainted thoughts? Yami couldn't answer. That's because you can't, maybe it was instinct, you preformed this dark and twisted skill, now you must strive to do it with all the good emotions of your heart, without the powers of cursed seal tainting your mind. He got up to leave. Yami grabbed his hand, but how do I do that? How do I set aside the darkness? Weizu looked at the boy, that's something you must discover on your own. What about my psychic powers? Clear your mind and try again, without all this stress and uncertainty you are feeling. What about my soul, my heart, my feelings? They are disappearing, I want them back. Weizu smiled and hugged the boy. If you were really suffering from lack of emotions, you wouldn't care that they were gone, the cursed seal has yet to rob those things of you, it has merely confused you, whispered the cage. He grasped the boy by the shoulders and looked at him straight in the eyes. But that doesn't mean that it won't take those things away from you, you're not strong enough to control the demon that lurks in your heart. Not in your current state, Yami, you mustn't go into the second level of the cursed seal again, maybe, one day you will be strong enough to control it, maybe you never will, only time will tell. With that said, the old cage left the room, leaving the boy to think things through. What the hell am I supposed to do? Training Field 22. Okami was in a vast training field, surrounded by trees. He was going through his normal exercises. This one involves hanging upside down, on a tree branch, and practicing swinging his blades. Usually he would swing each of his wakizashis 500 times vertically. He would repeat this action horizontally and diagonally. This time was different though. In one of his hands, instead of his other wakizashi, was his hakume shiken. He figured the constant chakra consumption, plus standing on the tree, would help him build up his reserves faster. When he started to run out of chakra he would sheath the blade. He could probably hold onto the hakume shiken for about 5 minutes before passing out from chakra drainage, and that's without using any jutsu, which would probably drain about 30 seconds from his time. This wasn't good enough for Okami, he needed to become much stronger. Inaki was there as well. He was alternating between concentrating, practicing his chakra scalpel and reading when he ran out of chakra. He would either read about the human body, to find good targets for his chakra scalpel or senbon needles, or he would read books on medicine. Inaki's eyes shifted to the newcomer. He smiled, hey Yami. Okami had stopped doing his exercises by this point and come over as well. Feeling better? He asked. Yami merely nodded, yay, sorry to worry you guys. Okami smiled, well you seem to be your old self, do me a favor, if you plan to go dark again, don't lose control. Yami smiled, I promise, I won't lose myself again. The promise was more to himself than to Okami. Okami nodded, well come on. We got 3 weeks left to practice. Let's get to it. The old man said he'd give us some training after he goes to check on the other 2 teams. Yami nodded. He went over in the middle of the training field. He sat down in a lotus style. I have to clear my mind if I want to gain control again. Light, darkness, none of that matters now, this moment, my mind must be cleared. His eyes shifted silver and he sent out invisible hands around him, which started to pick up rocks all around the psychic. He tried to pick up larger ones but found it near impossible. He smiled nonetheless. Not as good as I used to be, but I still have 3 weeks. It's not like those will fly by in a second. Hotel room, 3 weeks later. Are you boys ready? Asked the worried voice of the 5th Tsukikage. He had 4 Moon Anbu behind him. All 3 of them only nodded. Today was the day. Yami was clad in his usual attire, minus the black jacket and fishnet shirt, instead chose to go in a loose white shirt. Okami got rid of his fishnet shirt, but was dressed in the same grey muscle shirt. Inaki was dressed the same way as usual. Good. Let's go. They all started making their way out of the hotel. For 3 weeks the Tsukikage had watched the 3 boys train, and if possible they all grew much closer and seemed to age much in these short 3 weeks. Yami's telekinesis was at about the same level it was before he came to Kirigakure, which disappointed him. He felt that he could get much stronger, much quicker and was anxious to train it more. He had attempted the Hikari Kakuen many times, but it always failed. He felt as if he was getting close though, as if he were coming close to attaining his birthright. Okami had increased his chakra reserves somewhat. He, like Yami, also felt that he was only scratching the surface of his abilities and was desperate to continue his training after going back home. Inaki studied hard and learned a lot. His chakra scalpel became easier to use for him. His aim was much better and his Raiten abilities were coming along fine. Weizu had come every now and then to give the boys pointers. He helped them refine their skills. He tried to tutor Yami in performing his B-limit, though Yami couldn't fathom how the cage would know anything about it. He helped Okami with sparring, kenjutsu style. Lastly, he tutored Inaki about the body. He couldn't do much for the trio, having to help the other two teams out as well, though those teams both had their own Junin sensei. The foursome met up halfway with Team 17 and the other Suki nins. All the nins nodded to the cage, 6 genins and 2 junins. Though they bowed respectfully to the cage, the girls of Team 17 just stared at Yami and kept their distance. They would be going to the arena together. They would be watched by thousands of people from different countries. Everyone remember that it's important to try your best. You'll be watched by not only the citizens of Kirigakure, but by nobles from different countries. This tournament will be a way to advertise, if you will, out village's ninja. He looked at the youngsters walking behind him. Do your best, prove that our village is strong. The genins nodded. Good. With that last thing said, the ninja continued their walk in silence towards the arena. Arena. The ninjas arrived at the arena just in time to hear the Mizukage speak of the second exam. The genins were in the back room and listening to the Mizukage speaking to them. He was basically reiterating what the Tsukikage said, but trying to say it in a more flashy way, and failing miserably. The Tsukikage went to private stands saved for the cages, with his 4 Anbu. The Junin senseis also went with the cage. Yami looked around the arena, with his eyes, and was able to see the sound team that had been fighting with him at the end of the first exam. The one with the cleaver was staring holes in the back of his head. He also saw the leaf team, wearing those god-forsaken green eyesores. Lastly, only other team he recognized was the other leaf team with the masked pervert, the snake-wearing girl, and the smoker. So let's begin, he heard the Mizukage say. The Mizukage gestured up to 2 screens and then walked off with his Anbu following him. The screens flashed and words started flashing wildly up in them. Looks like village name, the word team, and a number, looks like they're identifying the teams by the village and team number. The screens flashed for a few seconds and then stopped. Mist, Team 12, on one screen and grass, Team 2. I guess we just gotta wait till our team numbers show up, he heard Okami whisper right next to him. An Anbu walked up to a board and wrote the words Mist, Team 12 versus Grass, Team 2. The screen started flashing again and names started going past it. Wonder what team we'll have to fight, Inaki wondered out loud. The trio continued to watch the screen intently, waiting for their own names to be called. They waited for a long time, seemed that just about every team had been chosen but theirs. Yami's eyes widened when he saw the next names. Moon. Team 17 versus Sound, Team 7. Yami face flushed at what he heard next. HN. Yami turned his head to follow the voice. It belonged to the cleaver-wielding Sound Nin. Damn it. They are up against those guys. He felt an elbow hit him in the side and turned to see Okami. He gestured towards the screen and Yami turned towards the screen and saw their name. Moon. Team 7 versus Leaf, Team 10. Inaki broke their silence. I wonder who they are. Yosh. We'll show them the power of youth. Shouted the 3 boys in their head. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.